The night the knock came was not silent. It was a desperate, urgent rhythm that echoed through the otherwise quiet suburban street. It was 1:17 a.m. I, Amber, jolted upright, my twin sister's desperate plea already a cold premonition in my gut. I didn't need to check the clock to know who it was. It was Claire, and she was in trouble. When I finally pulled open the door, the sight of her nearly stopped my heart. It wasn't just the fact that she was swaying like she might collapse, pale as paper and drenched from the unexpected autumn rain. It was the expression of pure terror on her face, a look I'd never seen, even when we were kids facing our father's worst moods. Her beautiful blue eyes, our identical eyes, were hollow, red, and utterly shattered. I didn't ask what was wrong. I knew. I had known for months, maybe even for the entire 2 years she had been married to Brandon. Brandon, the charming man with the expensive suit and the predatory gaze. Brandon, the man who had slowly, methodically isolated my sister from everyone who loved her. She barely made it to the couch before she finally succumbed to the tears she'd been holding back, shaking so violently that the old velvet cushions seemed to tremble beneath her. She clutched at the lapel of her worn coat, and when I helped her take it off, that's when I saw it. It wasn't the scattered bruises on her arms, which I had sadly learned to expect. It was the horrible, dark thumbprint bruise on the side of her neck, stark against her skin. It was like a chilling necklace Brandon had given her, a mark of ownership and violence. He had gone too far this time. He tried to kill me, Amber, she whispered, the words barely audible, tearing at my soul. He said I was pathetic. He said no one would believe me. Her voice was hoarse, choked with the pain he had inflicted, both seen and unseen. I held her close, feeling the painful fragility of her body, and a calm, cold certainty settled deep within me. The pain was real, the betrayal was deep, and the injustice was a gaping wound. But I wasn't Claire. Claire was the sweet, forgiving soul. I was Amber, the sister who refused to be broken. And in that moment, cradling my battered twin, I made a promise that was a vow and a curse. Brandon would pay. He wouldn't just pay a fine or spend a night in jail. He would receive a brutal, lasting lesson, one that would target his arrogance, his control, and his very soul. The first few hours were spent in silence, interrupted only by Claire's shaky breaths and the quiet rush of water as I tended to her wounds. The physical pain was visible, yes, but the deeper wounds were emotional. Brandon hadn't just used his hands. He had used his words, a weapon far more insidious. He had systematically dismantled her self-worth, telling her she was pathetic and a burden. Claire, the woman who had been a star college athlete and a brilliant architect, now felt misunderstood, overlooked, or hurt by a relative. She felt the loneliness and lack of listening and understanding within the family. She finally confessed the brutal, ugly truth about the 2 years of their marriage, the hidden corners of family life, the blueprint of Brandon's control. Isolation, the first lie. Brandon slowly convinced Claire that her job as an architect was not important and too stressful. He insisted she quit, arguing they didn't need the money and that her true role was at home. This was his first move to make her dependent, gaslighting, the emotional abuse. He constantly twisted her words, making her doubt her own sanity. If she questioned his late nights, he would calmly say, "You are being paranoid, Claire. You're losing your grip on reality." He fed her a feeling of being wronged, unfairly treated that no one knows or believes. Financial dependence. He controlled every cent, giving her a small allowance and forcing her to beg for money for necessities. The threat of financial insecurity and the fear of being a burden to your children were key to his power over her. By sunrise, the physical pain was numbed by painkillers, but the emotional clarity was sharp. Claire needed safety, but Brandon needed a lesson. We need to call the police, I urged, my voice tight. Claire shook her head, terrified. He'll just talk his way out of it, Amber. He always does. He's charming, remember? He'll turn it around and say, I fell, that I'm mentally unstable, no one will believe me. The memory of his threat, no one would believe me, was an emotional handcuff. I knew she was right. Brandon was a master manipulator. He valued freedom and independence only for himself, and he used his social standing as a shield. Conventional justice would fail her. Then the idea hit me. It wasn't a spark of genius. It was a cold, calculated necessity. We looked exactly alike. We were identical twins. We were Amber and Claire. What if? I started, the words barely a whisper. We switched places. I go back to that house, not as Amber, but as Claire. Claire looked up, confusion turning into a slow, terrifying dawning of understanding. Amber, no. He'll kill you. No, I countered, my voice firming. He's going to pay for this. The plan began as a crazy fantasy, but necessity sharpened it into a chilling reality. Claire would hide, completely off the grid. She would find peace and emotional strength, while I, Amber, would step into the belly of the beast. I would become Claire, and I would teach her husband a lesson he would truly never forget. The game was on, and Brandon had just met his match. The preparation was the coldest part of the entire ordeal. Claire, though frail, showed incredible strength in helping me study the nuances of her life. The slightest deviation could shatter the illusion and put me in immediate danger. This was not just acting. It was about assuming a complete identity to serve a greater justice. The transformation checklist. The look. We were identical, but Claire's prolonged stress and malnutrition had changed her. I had to soften my bolder posture and adopt her tired, downcast gaze. I learned to mask my confident stride with her slightly hesitant shuffle. The routine. Claire walked me through Brandon's complex, suffocating schedule. When he woke up, what he ate, the exact order he liked his newspapers. It was all about maintaining the facade of a predictable, subservient wife. The emotional state, the hardest part. I had to embody Claire's desperate sense of isolation. I practiced looking defeated, exhausted, and small. I had to crush Amber's inherent self-reliance and embrace Claire's learned helplessness, which was her survival mechanism. Before I left, I secured Claire in a safe house, a remote cabin deep in the woods belonging to an old family friend. She would be completely off the grid, with no phone, no internet, only a prepaid emergency landline with my number. We had only one rule: no contact unless I called. I stood before the mirror, looking at my reflection, at Claire. The deep, familiar fear in my eyes wasn't acting. It was real. I was about to step into a cage with a predator, but the memory of that thumbprint bruise on Claire's neck hardened my resolve. I drove back to that pristine, quiet suburban house. The house was his palace, and Claire was his prisoner. I was about to walk into that house and teach the cruelest man I knew a brutal, lasting lesson. The front door opened with a soft click. Brandon was standing there, radiating an air of frustrated patience. He was exactly as Claire had described, immaculately dressed, holding a glass of scotch, his expression perfectly sculpted to show minimal concern. "Claire, there you are," he said, his voice dripping with condescending disappointment. "Do you have any idea what time it is? I was beginning to worry your little walk turned into something more dramatic than it needed to be." His words were classic gaslighting, twisting the truth, shifting the blame. I fought the urge to snap back with the fire of Amber, to expose his lie. But I was Claire. I lowered my eyes, my voice barely a whisper, just as Claire had practiced. "I'm sorry, Brandon. I needed some air. It won't happen again." He smirked, a cruel glint in his eyes. He thought he was still in control. "See that it doesn't," he said, taking a sip of his drink and turning his back on me. "I don't need my wife adding to my problems. I need her to simplify them. I followed him into the living room, my heart pounding, but the cold logic of my plan kept me steady. The game had truly begun. I spent the next 72 hours living Brandon's nightmare, which he believed was his perfectly controlled reality. He expected silence, submission, and absolute predictability. But Amber as Claire was a slow-motion wrecking ball, operating with surgical precision. My goal in this first phase was not immediate confrontation, but inoculation, planting tiny persistent seeds of doubt and frustration in his mind. I leveraged my knowledge of his deepest fears, the fear of losing control, the fear of public humiliation, and the fear of financial loss. The assault on control. Brandon prided himself on absolute authority over the house. His routine was his religion. I began to subtly, irritatingly disrupt it. The Scotch glass. Brandon always left his favorite crystal Scotch glass exactly half an inch from the coaster on the side table. I began moving it, not drastically, but just enough. 1 millimeter further the next day, 1 millimeter closer. He never commented, but I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes as he would unconsciously nudge the glass back into place. He was beginning to feel that his environment was unstable. The digital domain. Brandon controlled the Wi-Fi password, seeing it as the gateway to his digital empire. Late one evening, I accidentally changed the main password. When he demanded to know how, I played the part of the confused, whimpering Claire. I don't know, Brandon. I was just trying to connect the guest tablet. Maybe it was a glitch? He roared, forced to spend an hour resetting his entire network, all while I sat silently, watching his face turn crimson with the loss of his independent living. The seed of financial dread. Brandon's arrogance was rooted in his perceived financial freedom. I decided to challenge that foundation. The unnecessary purchase. I used the emergency credit card he rarely checked to order the most ridiculously oversized, expensive garden gnome I could find. When it arrived, he questioned the outrageous expense. "Claire, what is this?" I batted my eyes innocently. "I thought it would look nice on the patio, dear. Doesn't everyone have a patio gnome? It's a simple way to find joy, isn't it?" He couldn't argue with such a simple domestic rationale. But the financial loss, however small, infuriated him because it was outside his control. The mistake. Transaction. I logged into his mobile banking app. Claire knew his simple password, and transferred exactly 50 $50 to a dormant, unused account under my maiden name. I then promptly deleted the notification. The sum was too small to trigger an alert, but it was enough to be a ghost in his system. It was the start of a financial Hojen Taichan, financial black hole, that he couldn't trace. He began to act out, his frustration building. He wanted the submissive, easy target back, but he was facing a subtle, unpredictable force. He started demanding more, expecting more compliance. He was unknowingly digging his own hole. Brandon's frustration reached a boiling point after 10 days. He hadn't physically touched me, not yet, but his emotional abuse had intensified. He was desperate to regain the absolute control he cherished. He started exhibiting the telltale signs of a predator losing its grip, moving from calculated manipulation to genuine rage. "Claire," he sneered one evening, tossing a misplaced magazine onto the floor with unnecessary force. "You are utterly useless. Why can't you manage simple things? Are you deliberately trying to sabotage me?" This was the opening I had been waiting for. The moment to transition from subtle sabotage to blatant setup. The public humiliation trap. I knew Brandon's pride was his Achilles heel, especially his need for social proof and appearing successful. I decided to weaponize it. The dinner party incident. I insisted we host a spontaneous, elegant dinner party for his most important clients and his boss. Brandon initially resisted, citing the short notice. I played the role of the devoted but slightly scattered wife. "Oh, but darling, they adore me, and I miss entertaining. Think of the image it projects." He reluctantly agreed. The sabotage. I prepared the meal, but with two key additions. I intentionally oversalted the main course to the point of being inedible, and I spiked Brandon's expensive decanter of brandy with a powerful, harmless laxative, the eruption. Mid-dinner, Brandon's boss choked on the meal, and moments later, Brandon himself was forced to make a hasty, embarrassing retreat. The dinner was a disaster. His face, when he finally returned, was white with fury and humiliation. The guests left abruptly, their compliments strained. Brandon turned on me, his facade cracking completely. This time, he didn't use words. He raised his hand. The final trigger. He lunged forward, the violent beast finally unleashed. But I wasn't Claire. I was a star college athlete and a kickboxing instructor. Before his hand could touch me, I moved with lightning speed, sidestepping his blow and delivering a sharp, precise strike to his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, confusion replacing rage. What are you doing?" he choked out. I straightened my posture, letting the confident, steely gaze of Amber finally emerge. The submissive mask of Claire shattered. "I am teaching you the brutal, lasting lesson you deserve," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "And I am not Claire." The revelation and the evidence. I calmly pulled out my phone, which had been recording our entire interaction since the moment the guests left. The recording captured his verbal abuse, his physical lunge, and his utter loss of control. "You should have been more careful, Brandon," I said, stepping back to reveal the 3 hidden cameras I'd installed since arriving. "This entire lesson, every abusive word, every violent intent, it's all documented." I revealed the evidence of his betrayal, the small financial transfer, the documentation of Claire's medical records from the abuse, and the damning audio of him admitting, "No one would believe you. Your reputation, your money, your power. It's all gone. Claire is safe, and I am here to make sure you pay. Not just for the bruises, but for the isolation, the humiliation, and the suffering." The game was over. I had fulfilled my vow. Brandon was arrested that night, not for assault, though the evidence of his violence was clear, but for a meticulous array of financial crimes I had uncovered over my 10 days of surveillance. Claire had given me access to his documents, and with my sharp focus, I had found evidence of tax fraud, money laundering through shell companies, and the misuse of client funds. The dinner party fiasco had been the perfect distraction, and the recording was the cherry on top, a psychological profile of a man unfit for public life. The sight of him, pale and desperate in handcuffs, his expensive suit now looking cheap and meaningless, was the quietest moment of triumph. He was utterly broken, his arrogance shattered by the loss of his freedom and independence. He had lost his financial freedom and the self-reliance he valued so much. The aftermath and justice served Claire and I watched the news reports from the safe cabin. Brandon's life was systematically dismantled. His clients pulled out, his assets were frozen, and the brutal legal machine ensured he received a lasting lesson for his crimes. The community, once so quick to judge Claire for being difficult, finally saw the dark past story and the true nature of the man they had respected. It was a clear case of justice-served family story, finding peace and emotional strength. Claire stayed at the cabin for 3 months, slowly finding emotional strength and healing her spirit. She was no longer swayed by fear, she was revived by the love of life and the knowledge that she was safe. She rediscovered her love for architecture and began sketching again. She no longer felt the loneliness and lack of listening and understanding she had endured. I returned to my life, knowing I had fulfilled my vow. But the experience changed me too. I understood the profound power of family betrayal stories and the deep universal human need to see justice prevail. "My beautiful friend," I whispered to the camera, stepping away from the tale. "If you are watching this and you feel the shame of the silent bruise, the emotional handcuffs of control, or the feeling that you are stuck in a job or a situation with no way out, please know this: you are not alone. The fear of losing your independence, the fear of becoming a burden, those are real. But your body has the strength, and your spirit has the power to break through those barriers. You are a great person, and you deserve a peaceful, safe, and fulfilling life. The secret to finding freedom isn't a miracle cure. It's recognizing the hidden door that leads to a new life. And sometimes that door is opened by the people who love you most, who refuse to let you give up hope or lose yourself. If this story of cold revenge and ultimate justice touched your heart, and if you recognize any of the warning signs of control, please reach out for help. Don't forget to like and subscribe to where we share the lessons that truly matter. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Claire's place?